Deadspin is being sold to a European startup company. Is being sold, to. This is coming after the lawsuit that's being filed, where they were race baiting and saying that a 9-year-old Chiefs fan was in blackface at a game and using a very deceptive photograph to back up their opinion on this, which was ridiculous, only showing one side of the child who happens to have Indian heritage. 9-year-old.
Yeah, they're going to be liable on that one.
Certainly thinking about and terrified about going bankrupt. Meanwhile, this new company, that's a European startup, not retaining anyone employed by Deadspin. They are editorial vision. Will be hiring based on an editorial vision more in line with their brand. It was announced in an email. Everyone's fired.
Amazing to me that in that email from the outgoing CEO, I guess, announcing what the board decided, really wanted to be clear that we were not actively shopping Deadspin. They just came in with an offer that really knocked our socks off. So, see you guys, you're all fired. The board decided to take the paycheck and sell this brand off, one of many brands that company owned, and they got it done that way.
Yeah.
Look, the whole thing with the kid and the lie about him being in blackface and all of that is disgusting. And Deadspin handled it so poorly. They could have immediately backtracked, and they didn't. They fought it for 11 days. Karan Phillips, the author of the story, acted like he did nothing wrong. And then they had to come back because they got threatened legal action against them.
And that's when they removed it.
And they removed it, and they wrote a retraction to the story, right? And all of that. So waited too late on that one. They're going to be held liable for it because of what they definitely knew after the story came out, and then still waited. They died on that hill. Deadspin did. Here's my question about the new ownership group, this European company with Deadspin. Is there truly a big market for far left-wing, left-leaning sports coverage? We know there's a market for right-leaning sports coverage because sports and the Venn diagram of the right a lot of times will kind of intersect in a lot of ways. I am curious just from a strategy standpoint how this European company is going to rebrand or continue to brand Deadspin, because what Deadspin has become is a far left-leaning sports site. And I don't know how well they've done financially or not. It doesn't appear to be that well with that. I'm just curious how they're, just like with the Sports Illustrated announcement, how does this new company decide to change Deadspin? Well, with who they hire and how they go about
it. But it's one of the brands that you do think about. Whenever we had the discussion about mainstream media now, because someone had mentioned that in mainstream media, and they were mentioning a blog or a website. And Chad, I think you posed a question just for the show, like what do we consider mainstream media now? Deadspin is one that you think of, and they've been around for a while. So, what can you get back to?
I don't think of them as mainstream media.
No, me either. But can you get back to what they were?
Yeah.
Instead of what they've become.
Right.
And that, to me, is same thing you would say about Sports Illustrated.
Yeah.
And the brand versus can you get the consumer to buy into the fact that you're retroactively going back to the time when you were really interested in that brand and the product?
Yeah, and I think there's different models. When I say, Deadspin falls in with more of the cancel culture is cool, far left-leaning opinions, everything is racist type stuff.
Right.
That's kind of their brand right now. When I say Outkick is right, I'm not saying that in the political sense of right-leaning. I would describe Outkick more as anti-woke, anti-cancel culture. Sports are the last bastion of fun. Stop messing with our fun type stuff, right? That would be more of the Outkick brand than anything that's, Republican, Democrat, or any of that. At least that's the way I view it. I would say the same about Deadspin. I don't think Deadspin is pushing political candidates on anyone with their coverage, but it's clearly they're carving out a niche of people who are in line with everybody should get canceled for saying the wrong thing, and political correctness matters, and sports fans, are misogynist and racist, and we're gonna put that out there. we're going to talk about the misogyny and the racism and all that goes on with it. That was not Outkick. That was Deadspin's brand. They failed. They've been sold now to a European group. I'm just very curious about what they do. You know, those first few hires they make for whatever Deadspin's about to become is going to tell us a lot about the new direction, or maybe it's the same old direction of Deadspin moving
If
forward.
you wanted to
I
be
don't
the same,
know.
you would retain the editorial staff.
I would think so, but maybe they just want to do it with their people and do kind of the same stuff, but with their people. I don't know. I don't know what it's going to be. I would assume it's going to be completely different based on the drastic move to just get rid of everyone in the company the moment they acquired it.
Yeah, and they're facing pressure from investors wanting a return on investment.
Yeah.
You know, and couldn't do it, so they sold. They're offloading.
I don't think it's a smart strategy. I mean, I'll be clear with that. I never thought that it was, because I didn't think the audience was all that big for what they were trying to do, right? There's a big audience for what they're doing. I just don't think that part of the audience is that big when it comes to sports and the Venn diagram of what they're trying to cross over and do. So I think we were proven right.
Yep.
Given that there's a lot of reports that they were not doing well, and now they're being sold and everyone there got fired. So, look, I'm just interested to see what the new direction is for Deadspin, because when Deadspin started, it was sort of a smart, funny take on sports is what I thought of it as in the very beginning, something very different from what you were talking about, what mainstream sports coverage was.
And maybe the new owners want to get back to that, because the quote from they will instead of retaining staff, they will instead build a new team, more in line with their editorial vision for the brand.
Yeah, and they're going to have to lay out what that editorial vision is, but we'll start to know by who they hire, and maybe they're just going to lay it out for everyone as they start to hire what Deadspin's going to become. I'm interested.
They plan to
I'm interested to see what happens.
Different approach, content approach regarding the site's overall sports coverage.
I'd also like to know, I'm assuming now this company takes on the liability of what's going to be paid to the kid's family that was falsely accused of being a racist, the little boy, and that was not in blackface, that they claim was in blackface. Do they assume that now?
No, I don't think you can.
Or is it's got to be Gizmodo, right?
Yeah.
Or Geo, yeah. Because they're the ones being sued.
They'll be named.
So I don't think that lets them off the hook with that.
No, and they can't claim ignorance.
And I'm sure they're also just looking at it like, well, this is just a cost at this point. We're going to have to pay them something. Let's try to lower that payout down of what they're going to end up settling, is my guess, with the family for an undisclosed amount. Just what is that undisclosed amount?
Chad, the 12th hearing is taking place today on Capitol Hill on name, image, likeness, and issues involving pay for play and issues for the NCAA needing a life raft. They need a parachute and help with regulation. There's a legislative hearing where Nick Saban was attending today, and it's tackling labor issues that could reshape the future of college sports. The previous hearing was more on collectives specifically. And they're looking for antitrust exemption, the NCAA. They're looking for employment exemption from the NCAA's stance and view. And Nick Saban, in his comments, didn't have a very positive outlook. He described why he retired and why, in his opinion, college football is doomed.
Well, all the things that I believed in for all these years, 50 years of coaching, no longer exist in college athletics. So it's always was about developing players. It was always about helping people be more successful in life. My wife even said to me, we'd have all the recruits over on Sunday with their parents for breakfast, and she would always meet with the mothers and talk about how she was going to help and impact their sons and how they would be well taken care of. And she came to me, like right before I retired, and said, why are we doing this? And I said, what do you mean? She said, all they care about is how much you're going to pay them. They don't care about how you're going to develop them, which is all what we've always done. So why are we doing this?
There's Nick Saban on name, image, likeness, collectives, and pay for play. Chad, while he he is right. It's about money. I sit here and say it was about the money prior to July of 2021. I mean, think about the allegations, those that have been caught, those that hadn't, of giving bags of cash or breaking the rules from the NCAA and the penalties that came with that. Players and families specifically, not even the players, the families were getting involved in this behind the scenes. Saban's been staunchly against this whole era that we've entered into, but he's always adapted to whatever has been allowed into the game or the style of play. He was so much against that bootleg offense type quarterback. And guess what happened? He adapted to it. And then they won a Heisman Trophy at the position. Guys went on to play in the NFL and play well in the NFL because the NFL has turned into that too. And he won national championships doing that. He's the GOAT because of that. But he didn't feel like he wanted to adapt to this because the coaches are pulled in so many different directions. I understand where he's coming from because the coaches can't do what they're hired to do specifically, and that's coach, because they're recruiting their own roster, they're recruiting the high school ranks, and they're recruiting in the transfer portal, and every branch of that tree wants the payday. And once you get the payday, you want more. And we haven't even scratched the surface on where we're headed, which is going to be a players' union. That's where we're headed with all of this, just based on the financial opportunities that will be out there.
I have to think that Nick Saban's being a little bit extreme because of the setting and where he is when he talks about this, because it can't just all be about the money. Because if it was all about the money, then Alabama's paying more than everyone else. Because he says it's just a matter of if you pay more money, you're going to get the best players, and that's going to happen. Well, Alabama's recruiting's been top of the nation since the NIL era started. So
until A&M.
Yeah, but A&M 1 year.
I know, but he called them out.
He called them out, but
I'm just mentioning that he did that. What he just said he did that to Jimbo Fisher, and I guess he's saying Kirby Smart's doing it now, right?
But again, it's not. It can't solely be about a dollar figure and nothing else for every single college football player. I just think this is we're going into extreme territory now.
And it's not that
you
much.
cannot sit here and tell me there's not some 18-year-old kid that didn't want to be developed by Nick Saban over the last 4 years. Give me a break. I'm sure there are plenty of parents that Miss Terry meets with that aren't sitting there asking for her ATM passcode to go get money because that's all they're concerned with on the visit is that. I am as concerned as any college football fan about the future of the sport because I think the two most powerful people in the sport, Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti with the Big Ten, I think they're making decisions based solely on dollar figures with some of their decision making. I don't think that's always what's best for the sport as a whole. I think sometimes there might have to be some financial sacrifice in order to get the right system in play. I know there are players that are solely focused on the money, and they're going to go where the highest dollar figure is paying them, and that's it. Okay? And I could name names right now of guys I know who are like that, but I'm going to spare you the details. But there's plenty of stories in recruiting of, 80% of the A&M class when they were number one in the country, that since a lot of them have transferred, they're not transferring for free. They got into it to start the clock over and get paid more elsewhere. So they're solely focused on the money. That's not all of America. That's not every football player that's being recruited. They're going to get paid something. But I don't think that it's just all the highest dollar figure is where they're going. If that's the case, then Alabama is right there with A&M every year. They're right there with Georgia. They're right there with Ohio State. They're paying just as much money as them. So one of these things is not true. Either Nick Saban was more about paying players than he's letting us believe, or maybe Nick Saban was able to attract some players that wanted to play for Alabama and Nick Saban and wanted to be developed by Nick Saban that also happened to get paid name, image, likeness. So I do think those athletes still exist. And maybe I'm being Pollyanna, pie in the sky here on that. I feel like those players have to exist somewhere, right?
Well,
it's not just a bunch of money-hungry kids that are, I will play for you for $1 more, and that's where I'm going to go play.
But consider, and you're right, the vast majority of the college football players are not in this pool. But in this pool, we're talking Ohio State, Georgia, A&M, who he called out, Tennessee. I mean, we know the brands, right? Michigan, we know the brands. I think he specifically, and in the comments that he's made about the pay for play and the NIL are in regards to high school recruiting, because he has discussed players want to come in and get paid first when they haven't earned anything, and he's not for that. You got to come in and then earn it. Well, the competition now is more than just Texas A&M. He's now losing a 4 or 5 star that he's recruiting to Missouri. That's one player, but he was used to getting that player. And he's competing against Georgia, and at the top of the list here, Clemson, who we're going to find out if they're going to go down the same path that we're going to observe with Alabama or not. Florida State. We know that Texas, Oklahoma's coming into the SEC now. I don't think he's afraid of competition. But with different state laws, and specifically at the high school level, that's what Bama was known for. They were going to get the 5-star to back up the 5-star. And now that player is getting paid in a specific state, or he's choosing to start his career elsewhere. The competition with Bama and Georgia was always going to be there. But now you're getting 3 or 4 players that you normally would have sign the dotted line for you on signing day. They're going to a different university based on name, image, likeness, and the collective. And I think that's where his mindset has been since this all started. The transfer portal is what it is. But there's behind the scenes video of him going up to a player. Maybe it was against Georgia, or it could have been. It was in the college football playoff, I believe, against Michigan. One of the transfers he went up to in the pregame and said, or right after the game, and said, you should have stayed. You should have stayed. You would have played more with us than there, or whatever it was. But he knows the game. He's adapted to that game. It's been going on for a couple of years now. I just think he's looking around going, we're not getting the same amount of the player pool at the top, the cream of the crop, right? The top level, the top shelf, where the vast majority of guys are getting, a handful of stacks. And then you have the very small group that is the difference between college football playoff or actually winning a national championship. And you're always recruiting those players year round.
Then he kind of sounds like a baby, if that's the case. If he's just complaining because I'm not number 1, I'm number 2 now in recruiting. It's not like they're not getting 4 and 5-star players.
But not just that.
Even in the NIL era.
But the 4 and 5 stars were coming in and just waiting. And there's no more waiting because of the portal. They're out. And they want to get paid first before they even earn it to play. It's not just the player's fault. Do whatever you want to do based on the rules here.
Yeah.
But the guy's also 72, and
in the NIL era, they had the number 2, number 1, and number 2 ranked classes nationally.
And with that, what he was vocal about where we were headed with that success.
Yeah, and if it's just from a personal standpoint of I don't like that I'm losing a kid just for a dollar figure.
Yeah.
And he's not buying my sales pitch. I would argue, do you really want that kid then? Because if you're all about player development and what you want in players, then those players are naturally picking you in Alabama, and they're signing up to go through the hard stuff with you and all of that. I don't know. I don't think that he lost out in the NIL era at all. And I believe what he's saying about those being very uncomfortable conversations for him and him hating it. And I'm not denying that those conversations didn't take place.
Right.
Where a handler or the kid or his family are immediately talking dollars right when they sit down with the head coach. I'm sure that it does. I'm just not going to sit here and say that it's everybody that's like that. And it's everyone that's solely focused on that, and that kids aren't also making decisions based on familiarity, on geography, on a number of factors, ability to win, ability to play quickly. Maybe it's like you said, Hutton, and he's just upset that more kids aren't willing to go to Alabama and sit behind 5-star guys. They want to play immediately, and that he didn't like the way the game was going there. I don't know. I refuse to believe and I'm as pessimistic as anyone about the future of the sport, but I refuse to believe that it's as bad as Nick Saban said, that everyone's like this now.
If we can't trust Nick Saban on Capitol Hill, who can we trust?
Well, I think
he has a chance to be the de facto commissioner of college football.
Well,
here.
they need to actually come up with rules and regulations for the league, whatever the Super College Football League is going to be, and that's what Nick Saban is
not have
ultimately
a
saying.
13th hearing.
Yeah, that's what Nick Saban is saying. I'm ready now to get past the congressional hearings and to someone actually saying, "Hey guys, I've talked to some lawyers, and here's what it could look like."
Right.
And give us some rules of a salary cap system for NIL, whatever it may be.
And Saban's admitted that's not his lane.
No, it's not.
And this is the 12th hearing since we're sitting here today, March 12th, 2024. The first hearing took place in 2020. This is a long process that was going on way before the era that we're in right now. And Saban is saying, we're doomed in 50 years is the sport even here based on what he's observing.
Well, it's not going to be here the way we know it now and the way we've known it in the last 40, 50 years. It's definitely going to be something different.
But is it popular? They had the highest ratings. It's never been more popular from a viewership standpoint this past year. So from the money and the money that's going to be spent as the college football playoff continues to expand, that's only going up, not down. The only way you change it if it goes down, right?
Yeah.
It takes that. Chad, Conference Championship Week is here, and the madness is here. It's the glorious month with the tournament and the bracket to be announced this coming Sunday. But before that, you've got some conference champions that have booked their way into the tournament already.
Look, public service announcement. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's enjoy the whole meal, not just the massive entree. And then the dessert.
This is the calamari.
That is the NCAA. This is the aperitif to the NCAA tournament this week. Let's not skip ahead.
Charcuterie.
Let's enjoy all this. Nice charcuterie board, a girl dinner, if you will. Yeah. Maybe that, right? That's what this week is.
Crab bisque.
Crab bisque, lobster bisque even, I would say. And speaking of lobster bisque, the Northeast Conference Championship is tonight. They know about lobster bisque at Wagner and Merrimack. That's going to be battling it out for a spot in the big dance. This week is awesome. Let it wash over you. It's incredible. Watching the automatic bids and the tickets get punched for the big dance by some of these smaller schools that are not going to have any other chance to ever be chosen as an at-large bid, they get their chance this week. And don't sleep on some of these teams. For instance, last night, James Madison, they punched their ticket in a blowout fashion, and Samford beats ETSU to advance the NCAA tournament. These two teams, Hutton, have combined for 60 wins on the season. You may remember James Madison, who went to East Lansing and beat Michigan State in the season opener this year, and Tom Izzo.
How about that program?
These are teams that are going to be trendy upset picks in the NCAA tournament. Samford likely to be a 13 seed. I think James Madison, 12, 11, 10, somewhere around there. They're going to be trendy upset picks in the tournament. But regardless, some of these other schools will not be. Milwaukee versus Oakland tonight in the Horizon. Wagner, Merrimack, who I mentioned, Northeast Conference Tournament. The Summit Championship between Denver and South Dakota State.
Love that.
The emotions and how hard these teams play in these games is so much fun to watch. It is sports at its purest level during championship week. So again, don't skip ahead to the entree. Enjoy the appetizer this week of conference championship games. And you've got the ACC tournament going on right now that just started. I know Notre Dame beat Georgia Tech. You've got the Big 12 tournament. I saw where Central Florida just dominated Oklahoma State in their first game today. Enjoy all of it. The SEC tournament's right next door to us here in Nashville. It's all fun, but especially the Horizon conferences and the NECs and the Summit Leagues of the world. Getting to watch these single bid leagues punch their ticket is a true joy. Don't skip ahead. Enjoy all of it this week.
How much of this is a little sports action, a little action on the game? Enjoyment. Are you on a win streak?
Depending on your taste, could be a lot of
Are you on a win streak here?
I won a parlay last night.
There we go.
I'm halfway down winning a parlay. I had Notre Dame minus 1.5.
You also had Kentucky this weekend.
They won by 4. I did.
Get the streak.
I went money line. This has been a profitable week so far for one Chad.
You going Merrimack or?
I have not decided yet. I am going to parlay those 3 games, but I haven't really taken a deep look at Wagner yet to know. So I'm gonna get into Wagner's backcourt here during a commercial break, and I'll let you know my play on that one.
Are you too high on James Madison and Sanford to the point where by the time you see your bracket, you're going to be like, maybe not?
It
You come
depends on
back
the
around?
matchup. Well, here's an example. One of the matchups that I've seen the most for Samford is versus Kentucky as a 4 seed. I'm not taking Samford to beat Kentucky. Samford plays a maniacal pace.
Can you imagine if Sanford?
Samford is a run and jump, full court press, shoot the ball quickly type team. High possession, volume possession team.
Over under 200.
Those teams often don't do well in the NCAA tournament. It's teams that play a slower pace sometimes that can have more success as an upset. But Samford will be a popular pick.
Popular pick for number 1 overall is Caleb Williams in the NFL draft. Chad, the reports are, and Ian Rappaport has put this out, that, well, the Bears haven't even been shopping Justin Fields yet. And that's because they don't really know if they're all in on Caleb Williams for their next franchise quarterback. So as NFL free agency and the negotiation period is well underway, and teams that were veteran quarterback needy have gone out and brought those QBs in, like Atlanta with Kirk Cousins, or what we saw from the Raiders, for instance. Teams that could have been interested in a possible trade with Chicago, they're not picking up the phone yet. And that's because they don't know about Caleb Williams. Now, this could be for a variety of reasons. You could have most teams that, you have negotiation tactics. That happens galore across the board in a big way. This could be incompetence. It could be about the medicals. And his pro day is coming up on March 20th, Caleb Williams for USC. And they don't have the visit with him until after the pro day. So maybe they want to make sure that everything is locked in. But, Chad, maybe they agree with us that they're not totally sold on Caleb Williams and the leadership factor, the true alpha mentality, and the franchise label. Maybe they're not there yet. I'm certainly not. Chad's mentioned this and echoed this too. I wouldn't draft him. Maybe Poles and company, maybe they're saying the same thing. Because unless they get this right, they're still the bottom third of the NFL, like any team that doesn't have their quarterback. And while they haven't made the decision on Caleb Williams, I'm also thinking, well, I guess they may go back to Justin Fields. Donovan McNabb, who we should get on the show from the 5 spot, he and Armando doing a great job, had this to say about Justin Fields. I think Justin would be better suited to stay in Chicago, and they would go into the draft and build around him. I think the best thing for him to do is to trade that number 1 pick and get more picks and continue to build the defense. Get some more offensive linemen in skilled positions. Maybe they drop down to the 2nd or 3rd round. You get Marvin Harrison Jr. and then come in there with DJ Moore. When you have 2 or 3 other picks you receive, that would help. They're just getting started last year on actually being able to put assets around Justin Fields. Now they have to invest in him, or they invest in Caleb Williams. He's the best quarterback of this group. He is. But is he the best for the franchise? Because if he's not, well, all this investment and the investment you had in Fields, you've traded him away, and you've decided, well, I guess DJ Moore and whoever else they end up getting, just not worth it. They've got a talented back now in Swift, and they're needing to improve the offensive line, but will. Defensively, they've traded away some of their top talents. They'll continue to rebuild that as well. But, Chad, I can't help but think they haven't even started to shop Fields. That's not a good negotiation tactic to me, because you've got quarterback-needy teams that now can assess what happened in free agency, and they'll just wait till the draft. But when it comes to the draft, if Chicago's got any reservations or hesitation about Caleb Williams compared to Justin Fields or Drake May, haven't heard his name in a while. You don't make that pick, you trade that pick.
I I hope that the Bears are as smart as I think they might be in this situation, and they actually have a holdup on Caleb Williams, the way we have said we have a holdup with Caleb Williams. The cynic in me also believes that putting this out there as, we're not sure, we may hold on to Justin Fields. That's a nice negotiation ploy to put out in public if you feel like teams that have offered something for Justin Fields are lowballing you. To say, hey, we're not sold on Caleb Williams, guys. We might just keep Justin Fields. If that gets out there publicly, maybe you can drive up the asking price for Justin Fields. And not openly shopping him, I think, could be semantics here. You know, you're not putting him out there publicly, but you're already talking to teams that, and I don't think there could be that many, especially now that Atlanta has their quarterback in Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, they've
probably
lost.
one or two teams they're talking to,
and to me, that's not,
that are interested in
good.
Justin Fields.
That's not good.
It's not good, and I don't know that this is going to work if, in fact, that's the case.
Because the quarterback
and they're
needy
trying
teams,
to drive up the asking price.
Quarterback needy teams have the second and third pick right now.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
It's
So it could be one team also.
It could be.
Or it could be all this is true, and they really aren't sold on Caleb Williams, and maybe they decide to draft someone else, trade down, someone that desperately wants Caleb Williams, and then stick with Justin Fields.
Well, and
I know what Armando's going to say to that. There's absolutely no way that's the case, but maybe it is.
it doesn't feel like that's the case. And Donovan would say that the Bears are cratering to public outcry that they want Fields out and Caleb Williams in. I understand Caleb Williams, the quarterback. I don't know Caleb Williams, the true franchise leader. I think he is about football, but that football mentality only takes him so far before you hear the business approach and his father's approach to things. And that just, I mean, who knows where that leads you? The demands about getting some ownership, which you can't even do based on the collective bargaining agreement. It's not allowed.
Well, and when you draft a quarterback, you're not just drafting a player.
But
right, you're drafting almost a CEO.
He's already complaining about the rookie salary.
Yeah,
that's slotted.
And that's why everyone should have their alarm bells. The antennas are going up on all of this stuff going on around Caleb Williams. I would think if you're doing your due diligence, you have reservations about Caleb Williams because of who he surrounds himself with and because of what some of those people, namely his father, Carl Williams, they're saying publicly, and if not publicly, what they're saying in boardrooms around other agents and league representatives. I have a lot of cause for concern about that.
If this next story is true, we should absolutely have cause for concern. As a backup Vanderbilt quarterback, a former Vanderbilt quarterback, Mo Hassan, who claims that the mob approached him while on Broadway here in Nashville and offered him $300,000 to help fix SEC games. Listen.
I was approached at Jason Aldean's bar in Nashville by the Italian mob.
What?
To fix football games.
I'm gonna be honest. This sounds like a story
like
that
the mafia?
I do not need to be a part of.
I went to get drinks, and so I'm alone right now. I'm not with my friend group. He comes up to me.
Wait, he knew who you were?
Yes.
This is already a bad start.
He offered me $300,000.
He offered you $300,000?
All right.
He said, for something like this, my clients, $250 to $300K for a game.
The Italian mob offered you $300K to do
Can we
what?
stop saying that?
He said, we regularly talk to guys in your position about fixing games. He said he named guys in the SEC who I don't want to say their names because they're in the NFL right now, and that's a bad look.
deal?
It's a bad deal. But University of Alabama, I will tell you that.
Holy crap.
He said almost every game in the SEC is
This
rigged.
Too much for me.
I hear that and I think that can't be true. That can't be true. But he's doubled down on this. Greg McElroy even said, last I checked, I have to be in the game to
fix a game.
Fix a game. And Mo replied to him and said, well, have you heard of prop bets? Affecting prop bets. And it was the Alabama baseball coach, Brad Bohannon, right?
Yeah.
That
he was betting on
baseball.
He was pulling starting pitchers on a Friday.
Yeah.
And then betting through someone in Cincinnati
right.
against his team.
This is crazy. But he goes into detail about he was not going to name other names with players, but specifically the SEC and the mob just down the street from us where we broadcast from, going up to the backup. I believe he attempted, 17 passes or something his time at Vandy, because he started at Syracuse, Then he went to a JUCO. Then he came into Nashville and played for was a quarterback for Vanderbilt before ending his time at USC with the Trojans. But he was injured, so he didn't have any playing time there. But does it go on? I'm absolutely positive it goes on. You know, I'm not naive to think this can't happen. But to be approached and then have him talk about it, spur of the moment on this podcast, the Momentum Podcast. Momentum Pod is where you can follow it, for $300K. It's a very specific number, you know, an amount, and it's not an amount that I wouldn't have guessed. You? 300,000?
No, it's a lot.
And
that's a lot more than I would think would be thrown out right off the bat.
And to me, just trying to work through why I could buy into this, you would have him go to the locker room and you would have that disperse, right? You would go to the players.
Distribute it to, hey, I need you to go under on something. They don't have prop bets, though, in college that I'm familiar with. Not the major sports books.
Well, maybe you don't
could
have to
be over under.
You don't have to go through the sports book, though. This could be,
you
know, just your average bookie.
Yeah, I've got you know,
I don't know.
Under 3.5 catches for someone. So make sure you don't catch 4 passes today,
right?
And you get $50,000 to someone. Yeah, I mean, I certainly
Vanderbilt had no comment.
Certainly, it's plausible and possible. All these things can happen. I think when people immediately hear, "Oh, every SEC game is rigged," they think it's predetermined who's going to win the biggest matchups. It's not that, right? There's been point shaving scandals that didn't affect the actual winner of a game. But the game is rigged,
right?
Because someone is affecting the game because of something betting influence.
And it doesn't just have to be a player.
It
could be a coach. It could be an official.
Look, I believe Mo that this happened. I don't think he's making this story up about someone approaching him. I'm not going to sit here and say I believe the guy and what he said.
Okay.
Right. I'm not going to go as far as to say I think he's making some pretty bold claims when he says all the SEC's rigged. All these games are rigged. Now, I don't know the legitimacy of that guy. I think this incident happened. Mo's not making it up. I don't know how connected the person is that talked to him or any of that, right? So I don't know that what he's saying is true. Is this possible, though? Yeah.
And we've seen games flagged. Most recently, the Temple basketball
It's
program.
Absolutely not just possible, probable that someone's getting hit up on some college team
and it doesn't,
in some sport and getting paid to try to affect the game.
Right. And McElroy, friends of ours who host the show, McElroy and Kublik in the morning, said on that, it's hard to rig games from the bench, so I've been told. And the response from Mo was, for those of you in my mention saying the mob doesn't need to pay off Vandy because we've lost a lot, you must not be familiar with prop bets, LOL. Saying, and since then, I've reached out to him. He doesn't want to do any more media because they're trying to figure out how to respond and how to answer certain questions now.
Well, he should respond on his podcast. That's probably what he'll do.
I don't know.
On how they're going to talk about
Vanderbilt had no response.